Well, hello and good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? Good, wonderful. Welcome to The Late Show here at the Corning Museum of Glass. Welcome to the Amphitheater Hot Shop. Yeah, let's get things started. So this is a special show. We are focusing our energy on Eric Meek. He is our artist for the evening. So let's give Eric a big round of applause. Yeah. All right, and assisting him today, we have a big team up here. We have Jamie Perrion over here by the ovens. Yeah, we can give her a round of applause. We got George Kennard over here. He's carrying that big heavy plate. Yeah, let's give him a big round of applause. He's already working really hard right now. My name is Lauren. I'll be narrating the show as we go along. If there's any questions about anything, this is kind of a more time-intensive show. We aren't really forced to fit within a 40-minute segment like we have been throughout the day. So right now it's the end of the day and we can take as long as we want. We're open until 8. We can go all the way to 8. I hope you all brought your dinner. Get ready for it. No, so we'll see how long this takes, but really it's going to be a really fun show because it's an intricate piece of glass, very time-intensive piece of glass. But Eric and his team will make this all look very easy. Eric Meek, he's been blowing glass for over 25 years. Yeah, so you're going to be watching a very skilled glass artist. And a little bit about Eric, he actually began blowing glass after his undergrad. And so a lot of people actually begin blowing glass nowadays. Like my generation, we learn how to blow glass by going to a university and studying. And I received a Bachelor's of Fine Art degree, and I studied glass blowing at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. There's over 40 different universities that offer glass blowing. But Eric, he actually went to school originally for environmental studies, but he also got a dual major. So he got a bachelor degree for environmental studies, and then he also got a bachelor degree in German. And due to the curriculum and how it was set up at his school, he actually had to take an art class of some sort, and drawing class was all filled up. So he was just telling me before the show started that thanks to his mother signed him up for a glass blowing class. And he was like, yeah, okay, that sounds fine. Whatever, why not? And since then, he really stuck with it. And then he became a grad student, and he went to Kent State. So he took his undergrad at Bowling Green University, and then you can also blow glass there as well. But then he went on and got his master's degree, and he was a graduate student at Kent State. But that's a very common way of learning how to blow glass, is really just going to a school and studying it. Now, the more traditional ways of learning how to blow glass, you would be an apprentice. You would go and apply for a job at your local glass factory, and you would hopefully get in, and if you got in, you would study underneath the gaffer or the leader. So the gaffer is an old English term that means grandfather. So Eric is not a grandfather. He actually just recently became a dad, so he's not a grandfather quite yet. But in a factory setting, gaffer just means the person with the most amount of experience, the head honcho, the one that's in control of the piece. So that's what a gaffer is. Now let me talk a little bit about what is actually happening up here. You all are probably pretty curious about what's going on. Now George has a kiln shelf, a plate. It's like a high-fire ceramic plate. And there's all of these little rods on top of that plate. These are called cane. So we're going to show you a cane technique. We're going to show you plaidicello. And there's a whole display cabinet in our 35 centuries of glass of just nothing but white plaidicello glass. And I even did a little drawing up on the whiteboard. You can see how I have lines going across one another. And in between each line, there's a bubble trapped. So that's the traditional plaidicello pattern. We can do that in glass. So after this demonstration, I really recommend going on a scavenger hunt and looking in our 35 centuries of glass. It's near the Italian glass. You can't miss it. It's a huge white display case of white plaidicello glass. It's absolutely stunning. But we're not using white glass today. Instead, we're using a few different colors. We have a dark blue, a steel blue, a black, and a green. And I'm holding up a few samples of cane right here. Think of cane as like pencil rods, for example. For this one especially, because the lead on the inside of the pencil, right? This one is black glass on the inside of clear glass. We can line up all of these cane together, heat up that plate, and then make what Eric has, a collar on the end of his iron, which is just basically a donut of sticky hot glass. And you can roll that flat plate up and now make a cylinder. And then we can close this cylinder off, and then we have the beginning of a bubble. So first we're going to get to that cylinder, and you can see he's just dusting off a little bit of the kiln wash that we use. If you overheat the glass, which you can do, we are working with 2,100 degrees. You can definitely melt some stuff up here. If you melt and overheat that glass, it can actually melt onto that kiln shelf, and you cannot get it off. You've pretty much ruined the kiln shelf. So the kiln wash is like a release that allows that cane to kind of easily slide off of that plate. Now, in order to do a reticello pattern, we're going to be probably doing this twice, okay? So don't worry if you kind of missed how he started this one or anything like that. We'll pay close attention. We'll get into the details of it on the second cup that he's going to make, just like this. So right now we have a cylinder, and he's rolling the glass on our metal table over here that's called a marver, and he's going to push that cane into one another and make sure that they're all right next to one another, nice and tacky, and they're going to fuse together. Now I can pass out these little samples of cane just to show you. I'll pass out this one over here, and you all can get a good look at it. I dremeled the edges because we actually have to cut the cane, and I wanted to make sure no one was going to try to find a sharp spot on these rods of glass, so I quickly dremeled it. But this one that I have in my hand, this is called veil cane. It is different from the cane that I just handed the woman over here. That's just simple cane with a little bit of color in the middle. This is veil cane because the color's on the outside of the glass. Now I can talk a little bit about how we make this, how you make cane. To make the cane, the veil cane, you need to make a color cup first. So what is a color cup? You just basically use and heat up a solid rod of colored glass, and then you heat up that rod and you drip it over a clear bubble. So you create a jacket of color around that bubble. Then you can blow that bubble up, and it has that color or that jacket of color on the outside. And then you can open it up and make it a cup. And then you take an assistant, your assistant gets a large gather of glass, solid, started on another iron, and they can drip that solid amount of clear glass on the inside of that cup. Well, once we do that, we can start to heat everything back up because we just filled that cup with clear, solid, hot glass. We can heat all of that up, and this is probably about the size of maybe a grapefruit, this sort of gather, the size, the scale that we're working with. You can heat up that much glass, and then you can stretch it. Yeah, you can stretch it and make a very thin rod. And we did all of that prep work earlier, because whenever you pull cane, it is like watching paint dry. For people who don't really know how to blow glass, or I'm not really familiar with it, or even for very skilled glass blowers, and you're watching somebody else pull cane, it is kind of like, oh man, you are watching paint dry because you're allowing the glass to heat up, and then you're just stretching it, and you're waiting for it to cool down before you can cut it into small little threads. So we did it ahead of time to save you all the trouble, and also to help expedite the process for us as well. We want to move on with the process and make a really beautiful cane cup. Now, all of these canes, they're straight. And in order to do a reticello, we're going to need to twist that cane in two different directions. This one is going to go clockwise, I believe. Everybody remember, it is clockwise, all right? Yes, because if you make one cane cup and it's twisting clockwise, and then you make the second cane cup and it's also twisting clockwise, you're not going to get this hatchwork pattern, not going to get that cross pattern that we're looking for. So you need to make one cup where the twist is going clockwise, and then the other cup that's going counterclockwise. How are we doing? How are you all doing out there? This is kind of this is really advanced, truly, for glass blowers and for anyone alike. So if at any point in time you want me to kind of explain the process a little bit more, go into a little bit more detail, I'm really good at that. I love detail. So by all means, that's what I do here. So I love to talk about it. No problem. Now, I passed out those little things of cane, and I'm making sure that all of them are going to come back at the end of the show, because we can actually still use those. Those are just little sample rods of glass that we can work with. Now, people typically want to know, well, how do you get glass color in general? How do you create that color? We don't use paints or pigments or anything like that. We actually use different metal oxides to create different colors in glass. So to create a nice blue, like I have right here in my hand, this is a glass color rod. I was talking about this earlier, saying we would heat this up and drip this over a bubble to create that jacket of color. But in order to make a nice blue glass, you could add copper oxide, you could add cobalt oxide. Everybody knows cobalt blue. Everybody loves cobalt blue glass. That's like the favorite color amongst people, I think, just in general. Everybody loves a good cobalt blue. Now, my professor in college, he used to say, if you can't make it well, make it big. And if you can't make it big, make it blue. So at least you can make it blue and it will be all right. But to get some of the colors that Eric's working with, he has a nice rosetta green in here. And to get a nice green, you actually add iron oxide. So pretty much, if you all have a rusty pickup truck and you got some rust on the bottom, scrape off that rust and bring it on in. I'm just joking, don't do that. We don't make any glass color here. We actually order all of our glass color from a separate color company who has been doing it for years for us, and they do a great job. They're very consistent in the colors that they make. So there's a few different color companies in the world today. There's Reichenbach, which is over in Germany, and they're the ones that we typically get our glass color from. And there's Spruce Pine, which is actually North Carolina. And Gaffer Glass as well is situated in Washington State. You might hear a loud shriek. If you do, I apologize. Oh, not this time. Sometimes it makes a big shriek. Whenever a glass blower takes the glass and it's not really molten, it's just hot enough to where it will want to move, and he dips it into this cup that's on the floor. This is called an optic mold. He's turning to create friction between the metal and the glass, and he's trying to create a tighter twist. Sometimes it just really makes a horrible nails on the chalkboard sort of noise, and I like to fair warn my audience so they're not just like, ugh, why did you do that? So he's just creating friction between the metal and the glass to help twist that cane even tighter, to make a really nice tight spiral in the glass. Very, very nice. Wonderful. Now we also have a dark blue, so you pretty much know now that we use a cobalt oxide to create that blue color in glass. To get a black, we have black glass as well. But the funny thing about black glass, there's no such thing as like a true black glass. Yeah, you just use a high concentration of, oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. Plug your earballs. All right, there we go. Whew. Yeah. Oh, that noise. Piercing, it's okay. And it's done. There, done. But in order to make black glass, you use the same metal oxide that you'd use to make purple glass. So you'd use manganese oxide. It is basically just, black glass is just really highly condensed purple glass. When you blow black glass out very thin, it looks like a really deep plum color. Just in case you didn't hear it the first time. There you go. We'll probably do that a couple more times, quite frankly. So, yeah. Anyways, so there is a piece of cane that's walking around amongst the crowd out there, and you can see it does look black because it's condensed into a small little thin thread in between that layer of clear. And if you work with enough of that black glass or a really condensed dark purple glass, if you use a lot of it, it really does appear black. So it's very hard for the light to be able to pass through it, for you to be able to see that nice purple color that it really is. The only real kind of black glass that I can think of is actually made in nature. Yeah, glass that's made in nature. And we actually have a good display of glass that is made in nature in, once again, our 35 centuries of glass. There's a small display against the wall of glass that can be found in nature, and it's called obsidium. Obsidium, it comes from volcanoes. Yeah, volcanic glass. And if anybody is like a GOT fan out there, Game of Thrones fan, obsidian, dragon glass, yeah, sorry for people who are into that. Yeah, anywho. So yeah, it's a black glass. It's really gorgeous. I remember I was out on the Azores and traveling around on one of those islands, and we came upon all of this obsidian glass, and it was so much fun. And people always come up and ask me, oh, well, if it's made by nature, like, can't you just take a whole lot of it and throw it into your furnace or break it up and use it as color for your glass? Not really, because it's a different kind of glass. It simply doesn't want to blend with our glass. If you put two different chemical compositions of glass together, they will cool at different rates, coefficients of expansion. I'm so sorry, bringing you back to science class, but the COE matters in glass. And if you put these two colors beside each other and they don't really like each other, they'll cool down at different rates and they'll literally pull apart from one another and actually crack and break. So I would not be able to bring in obsidian glass and work with it, which is a shame. I couldn't even just solely work with obsidian glass because there's too many imperfections in it. There's not enough flux in it, for example, to lower the melting temperature. I wouldn't know the melting temperature to work at to get the obsidian hot enough to melt it down and make it molten. I would have no idea. Yeah. There's also fulgurites, which is glass that's made by lightning. Who has seen Sweet Home Alabama? Oh, yeah, I know. Some people are like, oh, don't make me raise my hand to that. No, it's a sweet movie. It's charming. It's a charming movie. Who doesn't love Reese Witherspoon? Come on now. So that movie, she met a gentleman who owned a glass factory, and he took the glass from the beaches near his studio, and it was all created by him putting big metal rods in the sand, letting the lightning hit the rod, and it would conduct enough heat and enough energy to create glass in the sand, and the main ingredient to glass, people say sand, the main ingredient is silica, which is just a refined form of sand. That's just a refined form of sand. So it's just a little bit cleaner. They've taken out more of the imperfections. We wouldn't really want to take beach sand. Like I'm going to the beach here in the next couple weeks, and I can't just scoop up a lot of sand and bring it back here and try to melt it down, because there's too many impurities in it. It's just there's too many random things in the sand nowadays that I wouldn't be able to melt it down and control it. So the glass that we work with is a soda lime based glass, and it's the most common form of studio glass that there is in the world. Most glass actually has those three main ingredients that make up our glass, which is silica, soda ash, and limestone. So what they're doing, to pause on that story, they're puntying this. George created a punty, P-U-N-T-Y. They'll transfer this, open up this cup. When they're done with that cup, they will start working on the second cup. Okay, so I'll go into more detail about what they're doing on that second cup. Otherwise, I'm just kind of overlapping on a lot of details. But yes, back to those three main ingredients. I don't know if any of you all have ever broken a window by accident or have even installed windows. Even at the end of the show, come on up and look at the edge of our windows up here. You might be able to see a greenish blue tint to the glass, right? That is from the limestone in the glass that acts as an impurity, and it creates that greenish blue tint in the glass. But when it's pressed this thin into a nice thin wall for us to make a nice window, you can pretty much see through it, but there's still a little bit of a hue of green and blue in that glass, just from that imperfection. And people typically kind of ask me, okay, well, if that's an imperfection and you're using soda lime glass and it has that greenish blue tint to it, what about crystal glass? What makes crystal glass different? Crystal is, for the most part, the same three ingredients, but they also add lead. You can add lead to glass. You can also add barium to the clear glass, and that will help you create a more optically pure glass. So that means with crystal cut glass, they would use that glass, the soda lime glass, mixed with a little bit of lead, and then they would cut into it and engrave it and polish it, and it just gives it a higher refractory content. Essentially, you can see more colors of the rainbow by using that glass that's mixed with a little bit of lead. That's what that means. But with us, if we were to try to cut and polish this glass, it wouldn't give you as many colors. That's the main difference. Now, Eric, you all were just watching very closely, I'm sure. You saw him cut through the glass. Who was surprised that you could cut through glass? I was so surprised. The first glass class that I took, I was so astonished that you could cut through molten glass like peeling an orange peel. It was too easy. But as long as the glass is hot enough, that's key. Now, we always relate cutting through glass like it is like you're cutting through an orange peel. It's a thick, spongy-like material, but put a blow dryer right beside your hand, and you'll pretty much get a relatively similar sensation that we have to go through to cut through glass, because our hand is 2 inches away from 2,000 degrees. So it's really hot. There's a lot of radiant heat coming off the glass and onto us. So whenever we cut through the glass, we have to cut through it very quickly. We don't want to linger there. All right. But using the same heat right there from our secondary furnace, Eric is able to go in and flare open the lip and create a beautiful cane cup. Very nice. So everybody remember what direction those swirls are going, okay? Very, very important. That way he can remember to go the opposite direction. That's key. Now, when he's happy with the shape, I believe he's going to put it away in this pickup box over here. And a pickup box is, as the name implies, we're going to pick this little color cup up a little bit later. But that box, think of it as like a kiln. That's essentially what it is. It's just a big hot box, and it's all electric. And we keep that kiln at around 1,000 degrees, and that will be a safe temperature for our glass to be kept at. It's not too hot to allow the glass to slump, and it's not too cold to make it crack. It's just right. And it's a safer temperature, so it allows us to go back in and pick it up and work with it again. So we're going to break this first cane cup off. George is right there with a pair of gloves, and with a little tap, the piece will break free, and they'll hide it away inside that pickup box. And they're getting a really good angle of where it's going to be. So they stick it in a little nest for it to be able to stand up with the lip up. Let's give Eric a big round of applause and his team. Come on, that was the first cup. That is one of two cups to go. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the second one here now. So you're going to see relatively the same process, just him turning the iron in the opposite direction to get the opposite swirl going. Now, whenever Jamie opens and closes that door, I want you to pay very close attention. Yeah, because this is a really lovely furnace. It holds over 1,000 pounds of clear glass, but it is heated with natural gas and forced air. So whenever we open up that door, the gas turns off. That way the heat isn't bursting out at us. But when we shut that door, you're going to hear the burners slowly kick back on, because every time we open up that door, we cool the surface of the glass down. Now that furnace is up at around 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is a perfect temperature for our glass. It allows the glass to have a consistency similar to honey, mixed with maybe a little bit of molasses, right? So it has that nice sort of tacky consistency. I bake a lot, so I'll make a lot of references towards food. Just bear with me, but it makes it easier, I feel like, for people to understand that. If we were to overheat that furnace, if we got it above 2,500 degrees, that glass would be so difficult to gather. It would be almost like olive oil. It would just be too difficult to even get a nice, even round gather on our iron. It would just simply drip right off. It'd be too difficult for us to control that. Now, that furnace that Eric gathered a little bit of glass out of, that is our main melting tank. That holds all of our molten glass for us. But the furnace that George is in right now, that's our reheating chamber or a glory hole. Either name works. It's a big empty barrel of heat, and we try to typically keep that a little bit hotter than our melting tank because we use it to reheat the glass, hence why we call it the reheating chamber. Yeah, but it's just a big empty barrel of heat. It is also heated with natural gas and forced air as well to give it that nice heat and that nice temperature. Oh, did you just say we're going to roll it up? Is that just what you said, or did you need me over there? Oh, sure. No problem. No problem. Look, Mom, I'm blowing glass. Cool. All right, so George heated up that plate of straight cane. And Eric is flipping that plate around because the first thing to get hot is the very tip of that cane plate, not the very back of it that's closest to George. So there's an uneven heat distribution in that cane, in that flat bit of cane. So we flip it to even out the heat. I'll give it a little flash over here. I'm going to be right beside and behind you guys. Ooh. Now, Eric handed me this collar that he's created, and I want to keep it nice and warm, but I don't want to overheat this collar. I don't want to allow it to fall off center, so I'll constantly turn it, even though it's cooling down just a little bit. Every time I'm outside of a heat source, the glass is really dramatically cooling. But it still wants to move. It's still hot enough to move. All right, so the boys are working together, heating up that flat cane plate. They flipped it around one more time, and Eric can go in and squeeze the cane together to make sure that they're tacky and tacking beside one another, fusing one by one. George is also wearing a glove on his left arm right there. Sure. And that's just to protect him from the heat of our 2,000-degree furnace. Because he wants to give a nice deep reheat to that cane, make sure that it absorbs enough heat. And I didn't see who did it, but I heard it. I heard somebody tap on that plate. Do you all know why he tapped on the plate? It's to kind of shimmy the cane loose. Yeah, exactly. Because all it wants to do is melt down and be comfortable on the plate. But if you tap it, it kind of shakes it, forces it up. And look at that. Just the right shape collar. He's able to just button that up perfectly. That takes so much practice. It's unbelievable. I remember the first time I did a cane roll-up. It did not look like that whatsoever. If you make the collar too small and you have a really big cane roll-up, the cane is going to overlap and it will ruin your pattern. And if you have too big of a collar and too small of a cane roll-up, you can't button it up because it doesn't reach. You can't force it to reach. So that was perfect. Now, in order to get it just right, I know Eric probably had a little bit of help with a pie divider, which is a great tool that glassblowers can use to even everything out. There it is. I was looking for it so I could describe it to you all. And it always helps us out to measure everything. There's some things in glassblowing that we can certainly relate to woodworkers out there, which is you measure twice, you cut once. We definitely measure 2, 3, 4 times before we do anything like this, just to make sure everything will come out nice and even. So this is our pie divider. We measured the length of the cane roll-up, and then on the opposite side, this is the diameter that Eric knew he needed to make his collar. Does that tool make sense to everybody? Good, awesome. Yeah, this really saves us in a pinch. There's only a few glass blowers that I know of that can eyeball it and get it right pretty much every time, but they've also been blowing glass for a very long time, and they are professional cane rollers. Like, that's what they do. That's what they've been doing ever since they started blowing glass. Nancy Callan is a woman that I can think of, and she's actually going to be teaching a glass class over at the studio here, next month. Very excited to see her come in. It's going to be really nice to see her do some work. Hopefully we'll be able to have her and host her as a guest artist as well. So if you all didn't know it, this is also a world-renowned teaching facility. This is a world-renowned museum. Yes, this museum in itself is just stunning, but if you walk across the parking lot and go to the studio, did anyone do a make your own glass project today? Oh, awesome, half the crowd. That's great, I love it. Did anyone get to make their own flower or make their own ornament? Yeah, I love it. I love the flower. The flower has to be my favorite project there because you can sit at the bench and you can grab a pair of tweezers and poke and prod the glass and you can feel how sticky it is, right? Did your tweezers heat up at all? Did they, get stuck? Oh, that's always like a, you lose your breath sort of moment. Yeah, your heart's pounding. You're not really sure. Oh, did I just ruin my flower? But all the people that are working over there, they're very like, you can't stress out over something like that. You got to be calm. Oh, it's okay. We gotcha. We'll wiggle you free. It's fine. That's a really fun project to do. I loved that one. When I first came to the museum, that was one of my first jobs. Actually, I worked over at the studio and I worked with guests such as you all, and I assisted in them making ornaments, flowers, what else did we make? Almost everything, it feels like, but a whole slew of different objects. And then I came over here to the museum and tried out for the Hot Glass Show, and I've pretty much been with them ever since. So that was a really fun thing, and I'm happy to see a lot of you did that. That's great. It's a really fun opportunity to kind of get a little taste of glass blowing. And a lot of people, they take that 40-minute class and that 40-minute session, and they get the glass bug. That's what we like to call it, where you just get bit and you want to do it all over again, but you want to do it for longer periods of time. You want to spend more time with the material to really figure it out. And right behind the Make Your Own facility, there's 2 more hot shops back there. So there have been classes going on all week. Even last week, all summer, there's classes going on, and you can find out more about our classes that we offer here at the Corning Museum if you go on to CMOG, CorningMuseumofGlass.org, O-R-G. I've definitely typed in cmog.com, not right, cmog.org, that's everything. And you can look up the classes that we teach over there. I know I've taught classes over there, George has, Eric has, all of us have really taught classes over there. And it's a fun environment, fun and learning environment. And you don't have to be a very skilled glass blower like Eric or Jamie or George or I. You can just go in there and have very little knowledge of this material, and they're so happy to teach you. All right, let's make sure he's going in the right direction. No pressure. I think he thinks it's right, yeah. Notice how he's twisting the cane in the opposite direction. Good. Let's hope so, anywho. But yeah, we offer beginner classes, we offer intermediate classes, and we also offer advanced classes. And you can see the different levels offered in all of the classes. It will say it right in the very beginning, in the headline of what kind of class you want to look into taking. And if you think this is a little bit too toasty for you, we also offer flame working classes, fusing classes. Did anyone fuse glass at the Make Your Own place today? Yeah. Yeah, it's a waiting game. You have to have patience. You put it all together, and then they take it away from you. And then they put it away in a kiln and let that kiln warm up and melt in all of that precisely placed glass that you just made during your project. You have to have so much patience. I think that's why I was very drawn to glass as well, just because it was an immediate satisfaction sort of thing, or immediate disappointment when it broke. One or the other, either way, it was immediate and I figured it out, so. But that's great. How are we doing on questions? Is anyone curious about anything? Everyone's doing okay? We're getting close to the moment of truth where we actually make the plaidicello pattern that I've been talking about. I drew up that little diagram on the whiteboard as well to show you the kind of cross pattern that we're looking for the air trap. I wish we had a little example of it. Sometimes when you work up here, you make a lot of glass throughout the whole year, and sometimes it's like a cooking show. Oh, thank you, whoever's doing that. Yes, thank you. You can see a nice close-up of that drawing on the TV screens. They'll kind of zoom in and out. But it's like a cooking show in the sense that we already have something pre-made for you, and we can pass it out and show it off to you. But this plaidicello pattern, it's very time-intensive, so we don't always have a lot of time to be able to make this. But tonight is a really special night, and Eric was really excited to make the plaidicello pattern for you all. So we're getting ready. So excited, I heard that. Yes, what's going on? Yeah, what do we do with all the pieces that get made during the day? Oh, man. I'll wait for after that, yeah. Yeah, no, all the pieces that we make. So the pieces that we make, we can't sell anything that we make. The museum is a nonprofit, so we can't sell anything that we make, which is really nice for us. It takes off all the pressure to all the glassblowers, so that means we don't have a quota to meet at the end of the day. I don't get emails from Eric or Steve or George saying, Lauren, you're only making blue pitchers the rest of the day because those sold really well in the glass shop. That's all you get to make. They give us the freedom to make whatever we want, and it's a freedom that not many glassblowers get, especially when they go off into the production field and they're trying to own their own business. You're making a lot of the same thing to make that money back, but because we're a nonprofit, we don't have to worry about that. Hooray, it's so nice, takes off that stress. So, to relieve the congestion of all the glass that we make, we'd be tripping over all of it if we kept it up here. We don't have a warehouse where we keep it. We actually like to give it away to our most enthusiastic crowds. Wow. One guy got it. All right. Yeah, and our most inquisitive crowds as well. So the more questions, maybe the more glass we'll give out. You never know. Anyways, what's going on? Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the two markers on the edge of that plate, they're called Ferretti. And that they're like those two little bricks right there in between the goblet over here. I would pick it up, but I'm not sure if those are hot or not. So they're just little barriers because the cane is round. And when we're shuffling the cane on this flat plate, we're going back and forth. They could roll right off into our glory hole, and then there goes all of our time-intensive work. Oh my gosh. So we have those barriers up for the first few moments while we heat everything up. Make sure that they tack fuse together. And once we're very sure that they're tack fused together, then we can take those out of the way and remove them from the equation. They're not necessary anymore. Yes? How do we get cameras inside the furnace? There is a really sweaty cameraman back there. No, no, there is a small camera hiding behind the furnace, just a couple inches. So it's not physically inside of it. But let me pause, and I'll tell you that in just a second. This is the moment that we've been waiting for. He rolled up that cane the second go around. He's dripping that cane into the cup. If you can't see it from right here, you can look up on the TV screens, and he's stuffing it inside of the first cup that he made. And look at that. Woohoo! Yeah. So hot glass sticks to other hot things. That cane cup, the first one that we made, has been sitting in that 1,000-degree oven, so it's really nice and warm. And once we got the second glass cane bubble really nice and hot, it just fused right onto the inside of that second cup. So great, now we're gonna go ahead and move on with the process and start to clean everything up. And are you gonna gather over this too, Eric? Not before the encalmo. Okay, so this is going to get a lot bigger, but eventually, so bear with us. Anyways, but yeah, how do we get the camera behind the furnace? Or in that furnace. It's sitting behind the furnace looking through a little window, and you might be able to see the little cutout, the edge of it, right on the very corner on the top left. And the window is the really interesting part. The window is made out of a high purity fused silica glass. You can just call it fused silica to keep it easy if you want. But that fused silica glass, it melts at around 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And it was created here. It was invented here in Corning back in the 1930s, and they had absolutely no use for it at the time. So they basically boxed up all the ingredients, and then many years later, NASA came along and asked Corning if we had any glass that could possibly be shot out into outer space and then survive on the impact landing back onto Earth. So yes, we use that glass for windshields on space shuttles into outer space. We'll be using it on the upcoming shuttle to Mars, the Orion, yeah. And they also use it they found a really great use for it for optical fiber. So that's how we transmit information nowadays, is just through optical fiber, whereas before it was through copper wire. But no, optical fiber is way better to use. Yes, what's your question? Ooh, what is the glass project that takes the longest to make? Oh, that's a really hard question, because are you asking me personally, or do you want me to ask Eric if he's made a piece that's taken, what's his longest piece that he's ever made? Just in general, what's the longest piece being made? That's a good question. It really depends on the technique, but I would say there's a polymer telescope lens, so it's the biggest piece of glass that we have in our collection, and it was the waiting time that made it so long, because you had to wait for the thing to cool down. So that polymer telescope lens, it's huge. It is, like I said, the biggest piece of glass that we have in our collection, and we have the first one that was made because somebody opened up the annealing oven when it was around 11 months, and then it just cracked because that little burst of cool air came in and it cracked that lens. So they had to wait a whole nother year for that to be made. So they had a team, I think it was of 20 or 30 glass blowers, and they were working with these huge ladles. I mean, I could sit in it, and it would be like my bed. It's huge. It's a giant ladle, and these big burly men just scooping out hot molten glass, dripping it into an open face mold, and filling it ladle after ladle after ladle. Yeah, oh my gosh, that would be so time intensive and so hot in itself. So after they were done filling that mold, they then had to shut that kiln door, basically, and leave it shut for many months afterwards. So just that one piece alone took almost a year for you to wait for it. So yeah, I guess, like I said, it's a hard question to answer. But for the piece that is a good example in our collection, that one seemed like it definitely took the longest, in my opinion, for time for it to cool down. But I'm sure there are pieces in our collection that glassblowers and or casters or glass enamel workers, people who have spent their lifetime really perfecting their craft, they could have taken more and more months just to create one single piece of work. And I'm sure, it's just a time-intensive process just in itself. So what you were witnessing right now is Eric Meek making a plaidicello cup. And he's been doing this for now, I don't know what time it is, if it's what's the time? It's 7? 43 minutes after, okay, so yeah, for 43 minutes. So you are watching somebody who's been working with glass for 43 minutes plus 25 years, right? It's like a hard thing to equate in your mind, like how long it has taken to make somebody, or how long it's taken to make something like this. So it's definitely a lifelong learning process. It all takes a long time to really understand this craft and learn new things. You're constantly learning new things. There's so many new innovations in glass, and Corning is the leader in that as well. So we're really proud to be the leader in glass innovations as well. Now, yeah, yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah, the hot pad that he was using in his hand. What is that material made out of? Does anyone know that answer? You can yell it out. Newspaper, there you go, awesome. Oh, if I had a gold star, I'd give all of you one. Very nice. Yes, that is newspaper. Yeah, it's our local newspaper, of course. Gotta support the local, shop local. Yeah, so we use our local newspaper, and it's about 8 or 9 sheets, folded up into a really nice tight square, and then it's dunked in water. So you can see the steam coming off of it right now. We always keep that paper saturated. There's a little water bottle right beside that paper. There's a a little hole poked out in the lid so we can squirt the paper and keep it moist the rest of the demonstration. I mean, it is paper and it does start to dry out. Exactly. Thank you. Demonstrating that for us, Jamie. I appreciate that. Very nice. Yeah, it's good to really keep that paper nice and saturated, because it does eventually start to burn away all that water. It creates the steam. Oh, very nice. So here, Eric is cutting in a neckline. You can call it a jack line as well. We call it a jack line because we're using the tools called the jacks. So we keep it pretty simple up here. You know, the pickup box, what do we do with that? We pick up glass out of it. Jack line, why do we call it that? Jacks. We're using tools called the jacks. That jack line is a weak spot in the glass. He's already made several jack lines throughout this process. 2 already that I can think of. 1 for the first cup, another one for the second cup. Now here's this one. And that is a weak spot in the glass. How many of you all like chocolate out there? I am a chocolate connoisseur myself. I love chocolate. But let me just think, like the Toblerone chocolates. Does everybody know Toblerone? All right, or even Hershey, that's a really good general brand. Everybody loves Hershey. So Hershey, having that square of chocolate, you know how it has those little creases in the chocolate bar that help you break that chocolate bar down into smaller squares? I eat the chocolate. I just ignore those lines, but I know why they're there. But that line in the chocolate bar is very similar to that line in that crease in the glass. That is a weak spot in the glass. So the glass will break free from the smallest diameter, because that's typically where the glass in itself is usually the thinnest. And whenever the glass is very thin up here, it cools down faster. And whenever it cools down very quickly, it becomes very brittle. It will crack and it will break. So we're going to utilize the weakness of that jack line. And George has created another punty. And then they're going to break this reticello cup off of the blowpipe onto George's punty. And there we go. Let's give him a big round of applause for that one. Yeah, every time it breaks free from the iron, it is like super stressful for glass blowers. After a while, you might get used to it, but you still get a little bit of separation anxiety at that point. But oh yeah, some people love my puns. Love it. But yeah, you definitely experience a little bit of separation anxiety at that point, because you don't really know. Your first 4 years in blowing glass, that transfer does not always go smoothly. Oh man, look at that close-up. That was stunning. Oh, isn't that nice? Hey George, stop turning so we can get a good look at it. Now you all know now why we're turning the iron. It's not a nervous habit. We are working with gravity. With gravity. It's always around us, might as well utilize it, right? It's always pulling us down. So especially with the glass, it's so hot, it just naturally wants to fall off center, fall to the ground. So we're kind of like human lathes in this sense. We're constantly keeping everything nice and straight, nice and even. So I've had the question, how do you keep things symmetrical? I'm like, oh my gosh, practice, lots of practice. I don't know. It's hard to do. You know, if you blow out a bubble and if any one part of that bubble was unevenly heated, it's going to just completely throw off the rest of the demonstration. An even heat creates an even bubble. Glass will inflate wherever it is the hottest. So if one half of your bubble, the left side of your bubble is really hot and the right side of your bubble isn't, the bubble's going to shoot out towards the left side because that's where it's hotter. It wants to inflate faster and easier there. So an even heat distribution is everything, and that's something that you really just learn with time and a lot of practice. And you start to also hone in on a few key things, like a few key notes, like the color of the glass. You all see that bright orange glow right at the lip of this glass. So that's safe to say it's above 1800 degrees right there, well above that. So it's where it's hot, it's tacky, it's malleable, you can move it around, you can start to go in with the edges of the jack blades and start to lift the lip open just a little bit, starts to stretch it. But the glass back towards the iron, it's not glowing as bright. Did you notice that too? Here, we'll show you one more time because I know he's going to open it up one more time. And that brings up another really good point. But Eric is focusing the heat on the lip of the piece because that's where he wants to shape it. There we go. So really nice heat line in the glass that shows you where the heat's at in the glass. And now Eric, as he brings that glass out of the furnace, he can see that it's hot. You and I can see that it's hot. But when we're standing up at the furnace, we're all looking into the bright orange glow, and everything looks hot. So how can you tell at that point? When you can't bring it out every 5 seconds just to check. You know, it's like if you're baking a cake, you can't check on it every 5 minutes to see if it's raising or not. Like, you have to let it bake for a while, and then you can come back in and check on it. But Eric knows, once again, just through experience, yeah, that he just knows how long to stay in that oven. Yes, what's going on?
Have you ever made a combination of like a cup of like half glass and half steel? But steel can also go in the furnace.
Have we ever done a combination of metal and glass, like metal and glass collaborating with one another? Not me specifically, but there was an artist that was here. Oh gosh, what was his name? Albert Paley. Thank you. Albert Paley is a glass artist and a metal worker as well. He's a huge sculpture artist. He'll work with any kind of material, and I recommend looking him up, Albert Paley. We brought him in, and he had found a special kind of metal that had the same coefficient of expansion, so the same cooling time as our glass. So our glass, for some people who know COE, it's a 94 or 96 COE, and we had a glass, or we had a metal that could cool down at that same rate. So he was collaborating, he was pushing the bent metal over glass forms and allowing them all to cool at the same rate. So you absolutely can. There's only a few metals out there that you can really work with glass though. Otherwise, sometimes the glass and the metal, they just simply have different cooling rates. You can use copper, for example, with our glass. You can use copper and encase copper in our soda lime glass, and it will anneal just fine. And my professor in college even did a little project. Me? Okay, gotcha. I thought you were waving at someone behind me. I wasn't really sure. My bad. My professor in college had us do a penny project, and he had us collect pennies. I believe it was from 1976 and before, where they're mostly made out of copper. And we would encase them. And then he would demonstrate what would happen if we encased pennies that were made nowadays. They're mostly not made out of copper, and they would not fuse well. Yeah, gotcha. Now, George brought me back up here on the stage. What I have on the end of this iron, it is that color bar that I was holding up before. I was holding up a dark blue color bar and a light blue color bar in my hands earlier in the demonstration. And what I have right now is a really hot color bar. I'm getting it really nice and warm and squishy. Technical term for you for the day, squishy glass. And I'm going to shape it and press it to almost like a teardrop shape. And we will drip this on top of a bubble. So this is that color overlay that process I was talking about. This would be the very similar steps to making that veil color cup that we use to create that veil cane. Hola. Yeah? You want to take this? Yeah, I can shape it and hand it off to you, ma'am. Jamie came over, wanted to, aw. Here you go. She's relieving me of my duties. There you go. That way I can focus on the narration. It's always fun to walk, talk, blow glass, and do all that fun stuff at the same time. It's a good challenge, definitely, to keep your attention. Yes, ma'am. What's going on? Yeah, so this is a live demo, yes, and it is being broadcasted live as well. So the camera in the back of that furnace and all the other camera angles that we're getting, is it all motion censored? No, we have a camera guy right down here. He's getting different angles as well, but we also have our crow's nest, if you will. There's the box that's back up there. You see all the windows. There's people up there controlling everything, and it's our team of AV professionals, and they are awesome at what they do. They are so good at what they do. I would have no idea. I would walk back there and see all of the buttons and just be like, can I push all of them? I'm one of those kids that would walk into an elevator and just like whoosh, Christmas tree it, just like light all of them. But they do a great job of keeping up with the action. And he also has a monitor on and a mic like me, so he can talk very quietly to the whole team and say, hey, I have a really good angle down here, switch to my camera. So it's a giant control panel up there. But upstairs in our Innovation Hot Shop, it's all pressure sensitive. So there's a pressure sensitive mat that's on the bench. When we sit down, it changes the camera angle. When we step on the mat in front of that furnace right there, it changes the camera angle to where we can see inside the furnace. Yeah, there's a few different angles that you can see. So upstairs in the innovation stage, yes, it is motion/pressure sensitive. But down here, it's a whole team working alongside us, really making sure they get a really good angle of everything. Now, this was the color overlay process that I was talking about. Jamie has picked up this really nice hot rod of color. Eric, what is this color? It's gray. Oh, it's the neutral gray. Yep. Okay, great. So for those of you who might not have been able to hear that, he was just talking about all the colors in this piece and how they're really going to go really well together. So we have a neutral gray color bar that is just going to look bright orange, but it's just because it's so hot, it's emitting its own radiant light. Okay, so just remember that. We're not just working with orange glass up here. It will be a neutral gray when it's all nice and cool. So, ooh, yeah, the nice color overlay. Jamie got that perfectly hot. And it dripped right on top. And here, you see how the glass at the tip of the bubble where the metal and the glass are interacting, it's starting to turn black? It's because that steel is stealing all the heat from the glass. So it's stealing away all of that nice red-orange glow, all of the heat from the glass. Yeah, so we are going to have a few different colors in here. We're going to have a beautiful rosetta green, a steel blue, we have a black, excuse me, and a neutral gray, all mixed together. And this is going to be the color palette that we're working with today for this piece of glass that we want to make. Really nice. So the next step, we've made the plaidicello cup. That was already placed away. But now we're working on encasing this smoke gray, or neutral gray, excuse me, all the way around that bubble. So you can see he pressed down on the tip of that glass color and smoothed it back and really kind of smushed it back all the way around that bubble, created a nice even jacket of color. Now he can just really refine that and clean it up a little bit. And then I believe he'll probably gather over it one more time. Now the next process that we're going to show you is in Calmo. In Calmo, it's an Islamic technique. And it's an Italian name for an Islamic technique. That's what I was trying to remember. So, and it means to marry, essentially, to marry two cups together. So we have our plaidicello cup inside of our pickup box over here. And we're going to make a neutral gray, gray cup for the top of it. And we're going to marry these two cups together. So there'll be these separate band, and there'll be two separate colors, and they'll be really defined, just like this big blue vase over here at the corner of the stage. I would pick this up, but there's really nowhere to grab it. I don't want to drop that. Our friend Aaron made this, so it's really nice. But you can see how the bottom is completely separated and nice and white. It's like a broken copper blue and white combination, and then there's the copper blue on the very top. This is an Encalmo vase. So those two different cups needed to be pre-made to create that sort of color pattern. So you're going to see something similar to that. But I don't believe Eric wants to make a vase like this. I think he was saying he wanted to make a beautiful platter today. And that's a really great demonstration because you see a lot of different shapes throughout the whole process, and then it ends off being this giant flat piece of glass. Now, that's what early windows, the first windows were made from rondelles. Rondelles are platters, just big flat platters. Did anyone walk through the innovation area up here throughout the day? Yeah, good. Did some of you all see the glass blower holding the giant round flat disc of glass? That was a rondelle. And they would take that round flat bit of glass, break it off of the iron, and then they would cut it into smaller squares. Even on that rondelle, I think there's some small squares drawn on it. And they will cut it down to smaller squares and use what they can from it, and then put frames around the glass that they use. But the center of the glass, they didn't want to throw it away, but no matter what, the center of the glass, that's where your puntee goes. And so it has the scar left behind on the glass. But there are a lot of glass windows that would use those round cutoff bits from that round rondelle, the very center of it, the very core. And you could just make a really beautiful window just using the cutoffs, the central cutoffs. Now, people always ask me, this is a good shot right now to talk about it. Eric was cooling down his iron. People always ask us if the irons get too hot, if they overheat at all. Why aren't we wearing gloves? Are we crazy? But yes, yeah. But no, we don't need to wear gloves. It's not super necessary. Oh, good. Okay. I'll talk about that then. I'll talk about that after, yeah. So here, Eric is going to demonstrate how we get the glass out of the furnace. We'll play a little reel on the screen of how we get the glass out of the furnace. We had this all made up so people could better understand how we gather glass from the furnace. We dip the head of the iron below the surface of the glass. We turn in one direction, and we're able to spool on a perfect gather of glass. And we just shut the door and keep working. I love that little video. It's been really helpful so people can see where the glass is at in the furnace. It sits in a big ceramic flower pot. It's called a crucible. And I've talked to so many people that think it's like a cement mixer on the inside, that just think that the glass is just constantly churning in there, and we just stick the iron in and we come out and we just have a magic amount of glass on the end of our iron. The furnace does all the work for us. It's not the case. Yeah, it's good that we have that little cutout, that diagram for you, that nice little video, because it really shows a lot of what's happening and what we're trying to achieve whenever we dip the head of the iron in that furnace over there. We're trying to gather a nice even amount of glass. Now, the first time you gather glass, you don't get a perfect round, even gather with most of the glass off of the iron. Half of it is on the iron, and there's like a small pinky amount that's actually off of the iron. It's because it's really bright. You can hardly see inside that furnace. It's really, really bright. Now, I know people who have blue eyes, they're a little bit more sensitive to light than green eyes or brown eyes. But in general, if you have very sensitive eyes, we have glasses that you can wear that will kind of reduce the sodium flare in the glass, which is really nice. And they're called didymium lenses. Flame workers use those didymium lenses. Did anyone see the flame working demo today? Yeah, fabulous, good. That's a really good demonstration that we put on in the Innovation Center. Now, no matter who you saw, they're all really talented glass artists up there that work. But they work on a small mounted torch mounted on a table, and they're looking through those didymium lenses. Their glasses are purple or blue. And that lens is made from a rare earth metal. And that's what reduces the orange glow in the glass created by that flame. So it's a little bit easier for you to be able to see that glass. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, do the museum glass furnaces stay on all the time? Yeah, if anybody has a studio of their own and they're doing high volume production work, they try to keep that furnace on 24/7 all year round. But the museum for us, yes, we just opened up this hot shop in March of last year. It's still our baby. It's like over a year old. We're so happy to have it. It's so nice. Everything is still brand new to us. Like, we're still really kind of working with everything here that we have. I mean, you can do so much work within a year, but there's so much more to come. We're very excited about it. But yeah, so it's only a little over a year old now. And that furnace, we turned it on back in March, and this was actually one of the first pieces as well that we made with a guest artist. This is Jaime Guerrero's giant child that he made over here. But we made a lot of pieces to kind of christen that furnace, and it's been on since March of last year. We do not plan on turning that off anytime soon. With that size furnace, You know, it could probably last you maybe 3 to 5 years, hopefully longer. That'd always be nice. It depends on the use and the abuse of the furnace. Because there are skilled glass blowers working here all of the time, we don't really abuse that furnace that much. We don't really have beginner glass blowers come in here, take a gather of glass, and then, I guess, like, dribble that hot glass all over the sill of the furnace and ruin the sill of the furnace. So we take care of our equipment up here for sure. Now, I want to point out really quickly what's going on right here. Eric is poking a hole in the bubble that he has. So he's going to open this up and it will look like a suction cup. And then we will attach that plaidicello cup together, and that will complete our encalmo process. But with the furnace that Eric is working in right now, that is our reheating chamber, that is all that we turn that down at the end of the day. No problem. It takes only maybe about 45 minutes for it to come on and come up to temperature. There's no molten glass on the inside that we need to worry about, so it's totally fine to turn that down. Saves on heating costs and everything like that. But the furnace, if we shut that off, if the power went out, you know, there was a crazy storm that went through here a while ago. We have backup generators specifically for that furnace because we do not want that cooling down. When glass cools, it shrinks just a little bit. I mean, it doesn't go from like 4 feet to 2 feet magically all of a sudden, but it does shrink. It creates compression stress on itself. But when it's shrinking, when it's cooling, it's pulling in the sidewalls of that furnace as well, and it could crack the sidewalls of our furnace. And if we didn't see the crack, and we were like, oh no, it'll be fine, and we flip the light back on, and we get all the burners running again, and we heat everything up, the glass will start to expand, and it could start to puddle out of that crack. It would create more cracks. It would create more stress in that ceramic crucible. So we keep that on no matter what, pretty much. We have a backup generator for that as well. Yes? Yeah, so how do we control the surface level of the glass? Like, you know, we're taking out glass throughout this demonstration out of the furnace. How do we replenish the source? Yes, we have a big shovel. It's pretty easy. We have a big shovel, and we fill it up with cullet. And cullet is first generation melted glass. Glass, when you're originally mixing all of the ingredients, it all looks like baking soda or powder. It just looks like a talcum powder, white fluffy stuff. But we don't want to use that here. We don't want to fill the shovel with all of this silica dust, because we would have to get respirator approved and all this crazy stuff. It just creates too much dust, and it can be hazardous. So we have a company that mixes up all the glass ingredients for us and melts it in a furnace, and it kind of brings out all that molten glass like on a conveyor belt cookie cutter style, and it will pull out little nuggets of cold glass. And so they all look like ice cubes, really. So we take that cullet, that first generation melted glass, throw that into the shovel, and then we just shovel it into the face of the furnace. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Yeah, so that's just the style furnace that we have. There is a few different ways that you can charge a furnace. Whenever we replenish the source of glass in our furnace, we call it a charge. We're charging it. So I'm just going to pop back up on stage real quick because I'm going to stand by and get the door for these guys, because we are going to attach the encalmo together. But first, George wants to pick up. Actually, I don't know what George is doing. I won't lie. He's just making punty practice happen over there. I don't know. Making a punny. That's cool. Okay, so he's going back in and he's picking up the cup from our pickup box, using that punty for that. He quickly runs, he scampers back over into the heat. I just had a, funny visual of George scampering, so that was funny. But yes, he ran quickly back over to where the heat was. And he picked up that second cup to establish a little bit more heat into the glass. If he took his time, He's just like kind of waiting to get back into the heat. He could have cracked that glass. It's only coming from 1,000 degrees and quickly being placed into 2,000 degrees. That can thermally shock the glass and stress it out. So we want to work very quickly so it can just quickly absorb that heat and get nice and hot again. Now this is where the encalmo process happens. George will focus the heat on the lip of this cup, and then Jamie and Eric are going to work together and focus the heat on the lip of the section cup that we have. You can see he's using another set of calibers, to make sure that this will be the right fit for these two cups to marry. If one cup is too small and the other one is really big, it's not going to work, right? The small cup will fit inside the big cup and you'll get an overlap of color application, and there goes all your hard work. You lose half of that technique. So you can hear them talking back and forth, right? Saying, oh, you ready? One more flash. Glass blowing is a team sport. That is everything, especially when you're making something so time-intensive like this. So you can see the heat line right there. Both of the lips are very nice and hot. George brings this cup over, and they marry them together. What a good shot right there. If you look up on the screens, you can't miss it. Very nice. With a quick tap, it breaks right off of George's iron, and now we have the encalmo. It looks like the Tylenol pills almost, where it's red and well, I mean, really, that's the best way to describe that for me, or it looks like that encalmo piece over on the edge of the stage. But from this sort of pill shape that we have, we can condense it back down, make a nice round bubble, and blow it out. Now, it's up to Eric. He can condense it back down, make a nice round shape, and gather more glass on top of it. Make a really big, thick, heavy piece of glass if he wants to. Or he can just keep it at the length that he's at. Yes, what's up? How heavy is the glass on the end of the iron? Eric, how heavy is the glass on the end of the iron? Don't know, about 100 pounds, give or take? Yeah. 105, okay. Yeah, well, so. Yeah, there you go. So probably no more than 10 pounds. Now, whenever people ask us that, it's a really hard question for us to answer because the weight is 3 feet in front of us. So the analogy we like to use is like you go to the grocery store, you get 2 gallons of milk. We can all probably hold on to 2 gallons of milk close to our hands, keeping close to our core of our body, and we can walk throughout the store with it. But imagine walking throughout the rest of the store with the 2 gallons of milk in front of you. Just arms stretched out, and you cannot bring it close to your body at all. Otherwise, the milk will burn you. And so don't walk on the lava. But yeah, so you have to think of it like that. We really won't know how heavy this piece is until it comes out of the annealing oven tomorrow. Because you also have to subtract the weight of the iron that we're working with, the weight of the glass that's on the back, or the tip of the iron right there. You have to subtract a lot of weight into it when you really think about it. So it's a hard one to answer, but give or take 10, 15 pounds. Yes, what's going on? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So she's asking, so all of this seems like you really have to have a good plan and like a game plan to really make a successful piece of glass, especially something so time-intensive like this. Yes, you absolutely need to have a game plan. Does the team get together and talk about what they're going to make before the show starts? Yes. Eric would never just throw us to the wolves and say, just figure it out as I go along. If you want to make a successful piece of glass, you let your team know what's happening, because really you are only as good as your assistants. If your assistant gives you a bad punny and you've made a beautiful piece of glass, the punny is going to break the piece. So your assistants have to be just as good, if not better than you, to make a successful piece of glass. And in order to be on the same page, that's everything, to make sure that everybody is understanding what their role is to play on the team. So George right there, he knows that, oh, maybe Eric would need a heat, so I'll stand by the bench. I'm not going to, sit right beside him at the bench and get all cozy and help him out right there, but I can stand right beside the bench and be ready in case he wants to hand the iron off to me. Jamie knows that those doors aren't going to open themselves, so it's really important to be there for an assistant to help out with the doors and open and close those doors. We want to keep those doors shut as much as possible on that reheating chamber. Really important because it is gas heat, but the heat is really escaping if we open up all those doors. After a period of time, the hole will lose its heat, making us stand in front of the heat longer to wait for the glass to heat up because the oven cooled down too much. Yeah. So what Eric is doing right here, this is like large-scale torch working. He has a high-powered little hand torch, and he's heating up the rim where the two cups connected. So he's focusing the heat right there. That way he can get a very even seam line. Because when you place these two cups together, you're going to feel a little ridge in between those two cups from where they connected. So he's trying to make it seamless. Eric, did you say you were going to gather over this?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the seam out of it.
I gotcha. Cool. Yeah, so he's going to get the seam out of it. If he just kind of rushed throughout this whole process, just was like, let's go ahead and gather. No big deal. And there was still a seam, like a little valley created from those two cups, and he went to go gather over that, he could trap an air bubble in that seam line. And that's, those air bubbles, they can really be a distraction to the whole piece. Because if it wasn't intentional, if you didn't want those air bubbles there, then they're just kind of going to be an eyesore for you. Trying to see if there's like a piece with some bubbles in it that were intentional. Sometimes if you walk around through the museum, for example, in our paperweight collection, you can find these beautiful paperweights with this symmetrical air bubble pattern trapped on the inside. And even if you've seen it out and about, not even in our collection, those are intentional air bubbles. They want those there, that symmetrical pattern. And you can get that by using a mold to help kind of create indents on the glass. And we call that a diamond facet mold. I can actually grab the one that we have up here and let you all see it. Because it kind of looks like a medieval torture device on the inside of the diamond facet mold. There's all these little pokey bits on the inside. And Eric is just going to continue to work on making this Incolmo seamless. But I'll go ahead and talk about this diamond facet mold. This mold is made out of cast bronze. We have molds made out of cast aluminum as well. The bronze ones, these are like the big money pits right here. These things are priceless. They're really nice. But you can see the inside with all the diamond facet. And I can walk up to show you all if you guys want a closer look on the inside of that. So we can drip the glass in there, and it will poke the skin or the surface of the glass and create kind of like a golf ball texture in the glass. You know, golf balls have all those little dimples all the way around it. Yeah, so we can create that similar texture on the glass. And then when we gather over that, the glass doesn't fill in all of those little dimples. Instead, it traps air bubbles all throughout it. It's okay, I'm getting my exercise for the day. It's good. Here you guys go. Yeah, no problem. They're not diamond tips. No, it's just the diamond shape, like pointy. Yes, it is, yes. It's a little bit heavy. Yeah, I would pass it around, but like I said, we love this mold. And I totally trust you all, but this is also very heavy. So I don't want to force you all to hold on to it if you don't need to. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, very cool. This is a really tricky mold. It's very easy to get stuck in this mold because of all those diamond facets. All right, so Eric looks like he's happy with the shape and how he melted away that seam. So now he's going to go back into the furnace one more time to get the final gather of glass. And you know, if you guys want to play that video one more time, because sometimes some people might have missed it, yeah, this is how we gather the glass out of the furnace. It's always good just to double check, make sure everybody understands the process of gathering the glass. Now Jamie's right there to open up the door. He runs out and allows the glass to drip free from his gather. We call this a strip gather. A strip gather. We're stripping away all that excess material that we don't really need or want there. Now, people have asked me before, well, why don't you just do that in the furnace? Why don't you just strip off in the furnace? So you can just leave all that molten glass in there so you can gather up something else later. We don't want to do that because, first off, we're standing in front of 2,000 degrees. So that means we would have to stand there holding the iron at a steep angle. But that heat would be on us as well as heating up that core bubble. And then if that bubble were to overheat, we would lose control of that bubble. It would start to flip-flop everywhere inside that furnace. So we take it outside of the furnace very quickly, allow that excess glass to strip off, and then we can get a really nice encasing. Someone came up to me, and so they obviously must have worked in an office or something, but they were like, is that what you can call like laminating the glass? Because we just encased it in clear. I'm like, well, I guess so. Yeah, we don't call it laminating though. But yeah, you do just encase it in a nice thin layer of clear. That also helps even out the temperature truly throughout the whole piece. So now we can start working around and working quickly, to start to inflate this. And it looks like George right there, he was using the torch to heat up our jack blades. We try to preheat the jack blades before we work with the glass. That's really important because the jack blades, they're really thin. They're like two blunt butter knives, really. They're attached to tweezer handles. If those are really cold and we start to try to cut in a jack line in the glass, those thin pieces of metal, they're stealing a lot of heat away from the glass. But if we just go ahead and preheat them and we add a little bit of wax to them, we use beeswax. Yeah, beeswax to wax the jack blades. That way they can heat up and they can glide on the surface of the glass. Occasionally, you might see a quick little flame pop out from whenever Eric goes in to cut in that jack line. But until then, yeah, he's just evening out the temperatures. Jamie is there to assist and blow through the opposite end of the iron, help inflate it. Steve Gibbs has just joined the team. Thank you, Steve, for grabbing the doors. All right, so at this point, we want to only really heat up the portion of the glass that's closest to the iron, because that's where we want to cut in that jack line. So we can do some large-scale flame working right there, use that heavy torch, and burst a lot of heat on that top neckline. And then when we go back into this furnace, the first thing that's really going to heat up is going to be where Eric was using that hot torch, because it's already kind of preheated. It's going to heat up faster right there. Typically, the tip of the bubble is the first thing that's really hot, because it's the first thing inside the oven and it's the last thing to leave, so it's the thing that absorbs the most amount of heat on that end of the iron. But we really want the top half of the glass to be nice and hot. So this is where the jack line comes in. So we preheated it. George gave it a really nice heat. And he'll turn for Eric as Eric goes in and starts to cut in that line. Jamie is right there. You notice she has 2 wooden boards. We can use those as shields to protect us in our forearms from the heat that's emitting off of this glass. Eric is also using our Kevlar sleeves as well, or Nomax sleeves. And they're really nice to use when you're working right beside 2,000 degrees, because your arm will overheat right beside that glass. Sometimes you'll see glass blowers with red, it almost looks like they sunburned their forearm, but only on their right arm. It's because the right arm is the only thing that's it's the closest to the glass as we're working. The left arm, you don't need to worry about it. I've had people ask me that too before. Why doesn't he wear sleeves on both sides? Not really necessary. The left arm doesn't really interact with the heat at all. It's over here on the safe side, just turning the iron. The right side is getting all of that heat. So the smaller and the cleaner that jack line is, the cleaner the break-off will be later. and they're working very quickly to inflate that bubble. George was right there to help turn and also blow through the iron. Now, people think that we have iron lungs as glass blowers, that we need to blow super hard to inflate the glass, that we inflate truck tires in our spare time. You know, I don't know what George does maybe in his spare time. He probably does. That's what that's what you do. Yeah, of course. Why not? Yeah, just to get that practice in. No, pretty much, I like how Jamie said it in an earlier narration. If you can breathe, you can blow up glass, basically. So hopefully you all are currently breathing, and yes, you can inflate glass. It doesn't take that much pressure, really. We found out the exact amount of air pressure it does take to inflate glass. They said it was like 2 pounds of air pressure to inflate the glass. I don't know what that feels like. I have no idea. I don't know that one. But basically, if you can breathe or if you can whisper, it's a very soft breath. But you'll hear Eric direct his team saying, blow hotter, or blow harder, blow softer, stop blowing. He'll nod, he'll shake his head. Whenever he shakes his head, no, that's like, yep, stop blowing. I'm going to pop back up on the stage and maybe shield if I need to, in case he needs that. Because I know it gets very warm. There you go. So Jamie was right there assisting, turning the iron quickly for Eric, allowing him to really squeeze down very hard on that jack line. Cut in a nice, yeah, thank you, nice tight neckline. Once again, that's the last time that he'll probably be really cutting that in. Now what George is doing over here, he's starting the punty that we will create for this piece. So he started it, and now he's gonna let it sit in our pipe warmer over on the far side of the stage to keep it nice and warm, keep it nice and stable, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. But we still want to shape this piece. It's not really the ideal shape for a nice round platter, so this is what helps create a beautiful platter shape. By holding the glass up in the air, that allows the glass to squat back down on itself.
Puff, please.
I'll get out of your way.
Soft, soft, soft. Stop. Cap. Okay.
There we go. So he's using that wooden board to press against the bottom. There you go. And help create a really nice flat doorknob shape. And that's a great setup for a low bowl platter. Are you going to squat it back just a little bit more, Eric?
I think that's it.
Great. Wonderful. I love that pattern. If you look up on the screens right now, it's beautiful. Really an elegant shape. Really an elegant shape and an elegant pattern.
Look, please.
Now,
All right, George.
Jamie is sticking by. She's blowing very gently to the opposite end of the iron. Allowing Eric to contour and refine that shape. And then George will work on the punty. Yeah, the punty that I referred to earlier. So we allowed that core of the punty to cool down. We call this a cold core punty. It just happens to be a lot stronger for the next step. We want a really nice, strong, stable punty for the last bit of this because we've spent so much time making this piece of glass. This has taken all day, really, to make this piece of glass. We've been working in between shows, pulling the cane, stretching each individual rod, and then to really focus all of our time and energy on the last part of the day. And to have a faulty punny, that's not what we want. So It's important to have a really nice, sturdy, stable punty. So George is going to make that. They'll attach it to the bottom, the very center. They become human lathes at this point. Eric can control where that punty is really placed using those jacks. He can press down on George's iron just a little bit if he needs to center it. Now he's cutting in a little jack line in that glass on the end of the punny, and we all know what jack lines do now. It will break free from that jack line eventually, but we wanted to establish it now while that glass is really nice and hot. All right. So here comes the moment of truth when we break this off of Eric's blowpipe. He can use a diamond blade saw. So it's little diamonds embedded in the blade of that saw, and we can dip it in water, score the neckline or that jack line, and add a little bit more water to that jack line, and a quick tap, the piece breaks free. There we go. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful transfer. And if you look up on the screens now, you can see the opening that's left behind from that blowpipe. Perfect. So now we can go back into that opening and start to flare open the lip of that piece. But we want to even out the stress right now on the glass. We did just break it off, so it's pretty stressed out near that opening. And this gives Eric a moment to straighten that bubble as well. So that's what he's doing right here. He's turning the piece on the iron, making sure everything is nice and straight and symmetrical. Perfect. Very, very nice. Now, when we are done with this piece of glass, we would obviously love to save it. So in order to save it, we can't just break it off of the iron that it's on right now and just let it set out on the table and let you all come down and take a close look at it. That would be lovely if that's how things worked. That'd be so nice. But the glass here that we work with, it does undergo that thermal shock, that stress, so we would allow it to slowly cool in the process of annealing. And we have 8 annealing ovens up here alone. So we have our pick at the litter of which annealing oven is up, and we'll place this in the annealing oven when we're all done, and we'll let it slowly cool down. This piece will take anywhere between 8 to 12 hours for it to cool down. So glass cools due to the rate of its thickness. So I mentioned the polymer telescope lens earlier in the narration, and how I said it took over 11 months for that to cool down. It's because it was so thick, it insulated itself so well. But this piece, when we're all said and done, it's going to be a very beautiful thin piece of glass, and it won't take that long for it to cool down. But we'll still give it a full 8 to 12 hours just to ensure the mortality of this piece. Now Eric is going into the opening using those jack blades, and Jamie is right there paddling the lip of the piece. She's also simultaneously kind of shielding him when he does that, but she was paddling the lip of it to make sure that when it was being stretched open, that there's no weird waver in the lip, having it pull out unevenly. She paddled it to make it flat and have it run parallel with the bench rail. Whenever glass breaks off of our blowpipe, it will still break sharp and jagged and a little uneven, just like cold glass does. So we can just use heat and a little board, just an assistant, to be there to help paddle that lip nice and flat. And we'll slowly start to open this up. You don't really want to rush this right in the very end. You don't want to rush this final process, because it just, all this time, you want to really make sure that it just goes perfectly. Oh, very nice. That's a good idea. So George is getting out our roller machine that we have, and it will allow us to turn the iron continuously in one direction, which we cannot do that at the bench rail because it only gives us a couple feet to work with, right? At some point, we need to start rolling away from us and then back again towards us. But we have our roller machine. Yeah, George is working on that to straighten up those little wheel bearings. And that way we can place the iron on both of those wheel bearings, turn in one direction to infinity, forever and ever and ever. And that will really help out in the last step. And you'll see why. You'll really see why. It's going to be great. Are there any questions about anything? As the process is kind of starting to wrap up, we're really getting close to the end right here. Yes, what's up? You know, that's a good question. Who came up with the idea of using the logo or the furnace point of view as the logo for the museum? Question mark. I have no idea. I have never been asked that. I don't know. George, can I ask you, who came up with that logo design of the museum? I mean, yeah. Arthur Houghton. There you go. Now we all know. I just learned something right there. I've been narrating for 4 years, and I'm like, nope, never got that one before. So, Arthur Houghton. Thank you, Eric. Yay. Our historian, also glassblower. Very nice. Oh, Steve knew it. Thank you, Steve, so much. Awesome. Wonderful. Yeah, Arthur Houghton. Oh, for 50 bonus points, who are the Houghtons? You know the answer to that? The family that started Corning Incorporated. Is that the right answer? That is the right answer. You have 50 bonus points. Congratulations. Yeah. They're just imaginary points, but you can hold on to them in your heart, and you know that you have them. That's what matters. Very nice. Now this is a beautiful low shoulder bowl. We could really stop right here and this would be fabulous. This would be really stunning. But I know Eric has his heart set on a beautiful flat platter. Like I said before, whenever you're making a platter, you see so many different shapes happen. You know, at first you saw two simple cups. You put them together, then you saw sort of like a cylindrical shape in glass. And then we blew it up. We got a nice round bubble. And then we started to squat that bubble back. And then we got a really nice low shape. Yeah, so this is going to be it. This is the moment where we've all been waiting for, where he heats the glass up nice and hot. Keep your eyes peeled on Eric because this is what you've all been waiting for. He's going to turn the glass and the iron nice and fast. The glass will react to that heat and he'll be able to spin it flat as a plate. And he's going to bring it and put it on those rollers, give it off to his assistant, George, and George will turn the iron and he can contour the sidewalls. Oh yeah, that is a beautiful piece of glass. This is why we like that roller machine, so we can keep this shape. So he'll contour it. He's not going to make it a nice flat platter. It looks like he's going to make a nice sort of a giant martini shape, a very low shape. It's one of those platters that you can pile up all the cupcakes and they won't fall off the edge, right? Because it's shaped more like a low bowl. Perfect. Really beautiful, absolutely stunning. And he can contour the sidewalls using a wooden board right there. And Jamie will quickly grab the roller machine out of the way. George will put on some gloves and we will get ready to go and place this piece in our annealing oven. Now it's a really beautiful close-up. If you look up on the screens, you can see the inside pattern. Now this piece will be out of the oven tomorrow. If you bought your tickets to view the museum today, you can come back tomorrow because the pass will get you in today and tomorrow. So come back tomorrow. And this piece will be out of the oven probably after lunch tomorrow. A little bit of water on that punny connection and a quick tap. And the piece breaks free. Let's give our team a big round of applause. That was a beautiful piece of glass. Watch your back, George. There you go. Into our 900-degree oven. That was Eric Meek, George Kinnard, Steve Gibbs, Jamie Perrion. Wonderful job working together. That was awesome. What a beautiful piece of glass.